Hi, and welcome to this Python tutorial in the category or series one-offs. This is reserved for some Python programs that are pretty simple, straightforward, don't really fit into any other category, but might be useful, so I wanted to throw them in here. In this one, I'm assuming that you have a Python 2 code that you want to convert to Python 3. There's two main things that you want to be aware of. In Python 2, a print statement could be put to the command line without having a set of parentheses around it. In Python 3, it requires parentheses as if it's a function. Also in Python 2, there was a command called raw input where it would accept input from the command line. That's been changed in Python 3 to just input. So we want to write a simple script that's going to go through a Python program line by line and find out whether or not there's a print statement that it wants to replace, or if there's a raw input statement it wants to replace. So I've written a simple Python program here that has the two things that we want to change, and you can see it says print Python 2 is for the birds, but there's no parentheses encapsulating it. And then there's var1 is raw input, which is not accepted in Python 3. So if we go to our command line and we try to run this program, we're going to run python old py2program.py. We get an error. It says it's missing parentheses in the call to print, right? That's the first error it came to. So here's where we're going to go ahead and get started. Open up a new file. I'm calling mine ConvertPy2toPy3. We're going to import sys and os. You can do that on one line if you want to in this style. You could also write import sys, import os on separate lines. All right. If we're going to start assuming that we just want to convert one file. So we're going to say files. Let's see. Convert. I'm going to write a comment here. Convert one file. Files. Bear with me here if you don't understand. I'm going to go ahead and make a list called files, but I'm just going to put one file in it. And the file I'm going to put in it is going to come from command line arguments. So we're going to say sys.arg, argv1. And if you've seen that or not before, you should just know that what sys.argv1 is it's saying whatever I've written at the command line after my program name, turn that into an argument. And it's taking that argument, putting it into this list called files. All right, so now we're going to say we want to make sure that this is actually a Python file. And it's not a surefire way, but one good way to check that is to see, does it have the .py extension? So we're going to say pyfiles equals, and we're going to do some Pythonic stuff here, file for file in files if .py is in the file. Okay, so what do we do there? There, we're just saying take that list, look at all the files. So we're doing that for file in files. We're going to go list through all the files. And if in the list of files there is a file that has .py at the end, keep it. So this is just a way of sorting through a list and keeping only Python files. And this will be handy if we want to convert all files in a directory that are all a bunch of Python 2 files. And I think what you'll find is that this is pretty safe. This program should, even if it touches a Python 3 file, it converts it, but it shouldn't change it at all, because it's just going to make sure that it only converts things that are wrong with Python 2 compared to Python 3. All right. And if we wanted to, we could print our list of files. So pyfiles. And so something I like to do is just to test codes and see if they work. And so why don't we test this one out? So we'll save this file, and we'll go here to the command line. We're in the Python project folder. Say Python convert 2 to 3, and then I'm going to type the name of the file, which was old py2program.py. And if it works, it should accept it because it has the .py extension, and it should print the file that I'm going to convert to the screen. So there it is, and it even prints it as a list. It prints old py2program.py. So far so good, no errors, and we're gonna convert that file. All right, so now we want to say for file in files, I'm sorry, in py files now, because now we're just going to look at the sub list of whatever files are for certain Python files, or at least have the .py extension. Now, we're going to we want to do a few things. We want to convert this file, but we also want to preserve maybe the old Python program. And I think, in my opinion, I want to just be able to use the name, the original Python file name, as the new Python file name. And so I'm going to save the old file as with a different name. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give the old file the same name, but I'm going to put this underscore orig, right? So we're going to say, here, I'll just put it in a comment. So new file, or sorry, old version has underscore orig. So obviously that's not going to work if your files have that underscore orig in them, perhaps, but we're moving on. So now what we're going to say is if underscore orig is not in the file name, or not in the file, then we can move on. So we're going to open the file, f equals open file for reading. All right, so we're just opening the file. Lines equal f dot read lines and f dot close. Okay, so what did we do? We're looping through all the files. In this case, we're just going to have the one. And we're saying as long as this underscore orig was not in the file name, let's open it and read the lines. Okay? If this doesn't make sense now, it will make sense by the time we get to the end of this. So here's where we're going to now preserve the old file. And the way we're going to do it is we're going to try to make sure that we preserve it the first time we read it. That way, if we have to run our file multiple times, maybe we miss something and we want to add, we find out there's some other feature we need to add, then we won't keep converting the old file to the new file. So now we're going to say, what was the new file name? Well, the new file should be the file name, file.split, and file.split is going to say, take that string and split it somewhere. Where do we want to split it? We're going to split it on the dot. So now we should have that. What that does is it creates a list. So new file will have a list, or the file.split has a list of the thing before the dot and the thing after the dot, in this case, right? So we want the thing before the dot, which is the first thing in the list. Then we're going to add to this string what we said we were going to add, the underscore orig dot, because we got rid of the dot by splitting it there. And then we're going to add to that file.split on the dot and the second thing, the thing after the dot. So what this does is it takes that name, it splits it into two pieces. We're putting the thing in the middle that we want to put in there, and making a new string. And we're defining that all on one line, even though it's split it to two lines because of the size I'm using here. But you can rest assured it's all on one line if I make it smaller. Yeah, there, it's on one line. Okay. All right, so we have a new file name. Now, if the new file is not in, so what do we want to do now? We want to look and see, does this new file that with the dot underscore orig in it, does that already exist? So if it doesn't exist, we want to make it. If it does exist, we can just ignore it and move on. So we're saying if the new file name is not in what? And we want a list of all the files in the directory. Well, in Python, you can get that using the os.lister. And then you would say os.get current working directory, CWD, open close parentheses on the lister, and a colon. So we did a lot of things here. We're using, again, the OS import now. This should work on Linux, Mac, whatever. So os get cwd is getting the current work directory, and os lister is listing all the files and putting them into a list. So we're using the right syntax. We're saying if the new file name we just made is not in the list of all the files in this directory, then we want to make it. So we're going to say f equals open, and we're going to open a new file for writing. So that's what the W is for. And we're going to say f dot write lines. So we defined lines earlier, and we're basically just rewriting this file with a new file name, f dot close. So if the file had never been created, if this is the first time, then we're going to write it and we'll be done. We can even write a little print statement here. Print, and we can say, how about we'll say new file space was written. Exclamation. We should put a comma there. So in fact, we probably won't need the space there. So this is going to print that the new file was written. Okay, that'll tell us that it was done. And hopefully, if we have to run this a second time, it won't tell us that because we want to only write it the first time. All right. Now what do we want to do? I guess we could test out our code at this point if we save it, and it should write this new file. So it's going to convert. We'll just run that again. It says old py2 program underscore orig.py was written. Great. So hopefully we won't see that message again as we continue going here, because we've already written it. But every new code we come across, it should show up. All right. So now this is where we're gonna change the file and add the parentheses to the print statements on the after the print and before the end of the line, and we're going to change raw input to input. Okay. So we're still logically saying we're still in the case where underscore orig is not in the file. All right. We say I in range len lines. So we're going to loop through the iterator I in the range that's the same as the length of the lines in the file we're looking at. All right. So the current line we'll define as lines I. All right. That way we have something to work on that's easy to write, to type. We're going to say if, and here we're going to need to use a little bit of logic. We're going to have to say, well, what are we looking for? We want the word print to be in the line, but it only makes sense if print is kind of the first thing in the line, because if you're printing something that has the word print in it, you don't want to change that necessarily. Put a parenthesis after it. So how are we going to do that? Well, we'll do it the following way. We'll say if print is in line.strip. And so line.strip should take all the white space out of the before and after the line. So if there's any space before, like or a tab, or any space after the line is over, it takes that out. And we can even be a little bit more pedantic here and say, we're going to say, okay, take that word, whatever is in that line, and reduce it to whatever the first 7 characters of the line are. And so check that, because print has to be there. It doesn't. It could actually be technically, I think, 5. So yeah, but because it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. But we're gonna say 7. I don't know why, and maybe that's bad practice and dumb. But I'm leaving it there because I know that works. So what else do we want? That's good, but we also want to make sure that it's not already written with a parenthesis, right? There's print with a parenthesis would also fit this criteria. So we want to say and not print with the parenthesis. But unfortunately, Python will take as input, if you write print and you have 10 spaces and you have a parenthesis, it'll still print whatever falls in those parentheses. So how do we adjust for that? We'll say that print with the parenthesis is in line.replace. And again, it's going to take this line and do this replacing just for this particular test here. So line.replace, and we'll say space with nothing. So unlike strip gets rid of any white space at the beginning or end of a line. This will get rid of all the space anywhere in the line. We don't want to print the line without the spaces, but this is just going to test and get rid of white space so we can make a test. Does print parenthesis in the line after you've gotten rid of all white spaces in the line? That's what this is doing. And we say if that is the case, then that's a not. We don't want to continue if that's the case, because the print statement is probably already good. All right, so that is not in the line. All right, so that should be good. We can put a colon there. We have to tab out from our if statement. Then what do we want to do? At that point, we're ready to just replace. So line now should equal line.replace. And we'll say print with a parenthesis. Easy. All right. So now we've logically tested enough to get to where we want to be, and we want to place print with a parenthesis. We need to put another parenthesis at the end of the same line. So to do that, we're gonna do a few more tests. We've gotten out of our if statement now, and do we want to be in? Yeah, we want to be in the statement still. We're still in there. So now we're going to say while, and we're going to say while this new line character, sorry. Oops. Okay. There we go. While the new line character is in line -1. And if I didn't show you this before, then I'm showing it to you now. A neat thing about Python is that you can loop through a list of names from the back. So this is not even a list, this is a string, but with Python, when you add those brackets and you put an integer in there, it says, okay, you're requesting the nth integer starting from 0 index of that string. But if you put in a negative integer, then it says, okay, well, you want the last integer from that string. And you could put in -2, and that would give you second from last, -3, and so on. You can run into errors, of course, if you request integers that don't exist, if you said -50 and the string is not that long. But as long as the string has at least one character in it, then this -1 should work. It'll give you the last character of the string. And the last character of strings in these in these codes is a new line character. And so we're saying while that's the case, then we want to replace that. We want to get rid of the new line character just for the time being. So line equals line, and we're going to say everything up to the last character. All right, so we've just made the line shorter by 1. And is that right? Yeah. Okay. And so now that we've done that, we want to, what have we done? We've assumed that the last character is a new line character. If it's not, then this line will just get skipped altogether. But if there is a new line character there, now we've gotten rid of it, and what do we want to replace it with? We want to replace it with a close parenthesis and the new line character. So line plus equals, meaning we're going to append this to the end of the string of the line. And we want to put a close parenthesis and a new line character. All right, very good. Oh, hit the insert. Okay, so now we want to take care of the raw input, right? So if raw input inline, and this one's a little bit easier because there's little chance that you're using raw input somewhere in the code. And if you are, I'm sure you can probably figure out how to fix it back the way you need it. So we're just going to say if raw input's in the line, then line equals line dot place raw input with, what do we want to replace it with? Input. And that is as simple as that needs to be. Okay. So after we've looped through all the lines, made all those replacements, no, actually, excuse me. For each line, after we've made, while we're still in this loop for the I and range lin lines, we're going to go back to the end now and say now lines I is equal to line. So whether or not we touched any of that logic, if any of those if statements were true or not, we're going to go and redefine lines I as the line. So now we have lines I. So now we can get out of that loop, and let's just look up here. Where do we want to be? We want to be just out of the for loop, I guess. Yeah. So once we're out of the for loop, we just want to write the file. So f equals open file, and we're replacing the original file now. We're going to open that file for writing, and we're going to say f dot write lines f dot close, and that's it. Okay, so let's save our code, and we're going to just do a dir right now. Oh, we can't hardly see anything in our directory, but we have ConvertPy2toPy3, we have my program.py from something else. We have the old Py2 program and old Py2 program underscore orig. So let's just here, we'll do a test where we say, what if we want to try to convert that orig.py file? We want to change it. And it didn't do anything, hopefully, because we told it that if it has that word orig in it, that it doesn't want to print it. Okay, so let's do it on the real file. Okay, so now we're going to go back to our editor here and check out our program, and it says our program has changed. And how has it changed? All right, well, our print statements now have the parentheses, the beginning and end. Raw input was changed from raw input to input, and now we can see if we can run that program that we couldn't run before. So in fact, I'll just up arrow a couple times. So if we run the old program, it prints, it runs the program. Python 2 is for the birds. Why did Python change the print function and input to input? Okay, so I hope you've enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that you now understand how to convert an old Python 2 program into a Python 3 program. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Hey there, sorry about that. I wanted to make sure that I mentioned something that's a little important in case you wanted to use that option I introduced earlier. Well, that, and I left my code hanging. So here where it said, why did Python change print function from and input to input? That's actually awaiting my input. So I can type in my input. So whatever, my input, and then it actually prints out my input because that's what it's, the last line of the code of that stupid code. Here it says print var1, so it did. I recorded var1, it printed it. You can also see that the commented outline is now, if I was to uncomment it, it would work in the code, which is kind of nice, but it doesn't matter here. All right, so I did want to show you that, but I also wanted to go and just look at the top here and do two things. One, so if you wanted to convert all the files, you would write a different input statement. So instead of this one, which we can comment out, you might write, so here we'll put a comment for all files. And we'll say files equals os.listdir. And what do we want to get? We want to get os.get current working directory. All right. And so what is this going to do? This is going to produce a folder with all of the files in the directory. Then it's going to, the next thing it'll do is it'll convert that, as we said before, from Py file to Py file. So it'll just accept Python files. And it'll print all the different files that it wants to run. Then it will go through the loop and do all the Python magic. Now, one thing we might want to just add in here, just so that we don't have any weird overwriting while we're using the program, is to put in a statement. And we'll say try. So if you haven't seen this before, this is the first time you're seeing the try function. So there's try is kind of like, it allows the program to run and see if you got an error. And if you get an error, then it goes to the next thing. So instead of like an if else, it says it's try and accept. So it's going to try this, expecting that there might be an error. And if there is an error, then it goes to the accept. All right, so it's going to try pyfiles.remove, and we're going to say the name of the program we've written, which is ConvertPy2toPy3. All right, so if that's not in the list, then it won't. Then it would give an error. But if it is in the list, it will remove it from the list. So accept. We can just hit pass. Pass does nothing. We could also write a print statement to let you know that it passed. But in this case, we'll just do pass. Again, just to introduce these things that maybe you've not seen in Python before. So now that we've changed our program, let's try running it one more time. So Python, not old programs, but we don't actually need to give it the input now. We're just going to say convert2to3.py, and it should do all the files in our directory. So you can see it wrote my program underscore orig. So that one it converted, except that that one was already written in Python 3, so it didn't need to be converted. However, it took in my program.py, old py2 program.py, and old py2 program orig, but it ignored all of those because they had already been written. And so it shouldn't, if I try to run the my old py2 program underscore orig, if I try to run that, it gives me the syntax error. And again, if I try to run the other one, it still works, and I can write my input, and it prints my input. Okay, so I wanted to make sure you saw that the program did work in total. Thank you for watching. We'll see you next time.